Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Van Meter, and today I had a really engaging and fun conversation with Derek from LOC Industries, just outside of Detroit. Derek is the VP and one of the owners there and has been there since he was 19 years old. They are a really interesting, diversified company that does CNC machining, composites, sheet metal fabrication, painting, acrylic forming, basically all the processes needed to make things onto helicopters and airplanes, like entire doors and window assemblies. Really fascinating stuff. We get into the process of implementing processes, AS9100, getting NADCAP certification, lean, but not formally, but just clearly continuously focusing on improving processes. Derek's kind of a self-taught guy in many ways, and I think brings a really interesting and logical perspective, so that sort of in a way that makes it sound simple. I know it's not. It's, what they do is terribly complicated, really sophisticated. But I just loved his approach to curiosity, always being a sponge, learning from other people, and just kind of trudging along. Getting better all the time. He tells a great story about increasing their score with Sikorsky, one of their main clients, from the low teens to close to 100% a couple of years later. So there's some really interesting stories from Derek, and I know you'll enjoy the episode. So without further ado, let's go talk to Derek. Well, good morning, Derek. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I am, after we sat next to each other at dinner at West Tech and had a fun conversation, I've just been excited ever since to get you on the show. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and your company, let the audience get to know you and the company, and just, let's dig in.
Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of LOC Industries. We're an aerospace and defense contractor just outside of Detroit, Michigan. And we've been in business since about 2009, and I was the second person hired. Believe it or not, I was 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
So most of my background is with LOC Industries. But before that, odd jobs through high school, trying to make money, cutting grass with the neighbors and whatnot. But
Sure.
So we started directly with doing work for the government. And grew from there. I know most shops start with the smaller short runs and whatnot. We went direct for the DLA and specifically aviation, and which led us to really kind of not know what was coming our way. And where that goes into is we're a composite shop, we're a CNC shop, we're a sheet metal shop. We do a little bit of everything. And that's unique in the fact that now we're doing business direct with the big OEMs, where they'll give us the complex assemblies that they can send us things that it might be a composite honeycomb fairing, right? And on that fairing, there could be a machined latch, and then there could also be a formed window. And we can do a little bit of everything in-house.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what year was this that you were 19 and joined as the second employee, just to put us in?
That was about 2009.
Say how old you are. 2009. Okay.
Yeah.
It's 2024, so 15 years ago.
Yep. Right around there. Yep.
All right.
So
all right.
That story starts with my partner, Dave. This is his third company. His two previous companies were in the automotive world, and he wanted to venture into aerospace. So we started up LOC Industries, and he said to my dad, who was an electrical contractor for him back in the day, hey, you got a son that needs a job for the summer, and kind of the rest is history. So here we are.
I just fell right into it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And did I remember right that you were going to college at the time? So this was a part-time job originally?
Yep. So I was at Michigan State University. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I went through engineering school, started at Michigan State, quickly realized the big university really wasn't for me. So I transferred to Lawrence Tech, where that was the best decision I ever made. Where I remember I went from Michigan State, where you're one person in a sea of 300 people, right, of one classroom, a lecture hall, and going into Lawrence Tech. There was one time I got a flat tire, and my professor texted me and goes, "Hey, do you want us to start a little late? Are you going to be on time?" So they got a flat tire,
That's amazing.
right? So totally different
Yeah.
environment, which I just excelled at the Lawrence Tech setting.
Wow.
So,
That is,
yeah.
interestingly enough, that is so parallel to my experience as well. I started mechanical engineering at Boston University, and I remember sitting in a sea of like 300 to 500 people in a huge lecture hall, with some whatever entry level engineering classes, and just hating it, just so boring, so disconnected. And then I read about this program called the Vehicle Research Institute out here in Bellingham, Washington, and the class sizes were on average like 6 or 8 people.
Wow.
I never got a text from the instructor, but it was such a different and such a more engaging experience. So yeah. And I quite honestly, just to riff on that a minute, the people, young people that are in a more traditional educational situation, but just really don't feel connected to the teaching, to the topics, to the content. Oftentimes, they really thrive in a hands-on, more sort of interactive, sort of smaller environment experience, and that was absolutely my experience. And so it's good to identify when that's a change that needs to be made, because trying to just square peg round hole kind of thing is just it's really tough. So I'm glad you found something that really worked for you.
Yeah, and it was to the point too where I was working 40 hours a week at LOC and going to school at night, and it was so engaging that I was able to work at LOC on the shop floor, go to Lawrence Tech. I was there probably till 10, 11 at night, and I was part of the Baja SAE team. And all of this combined was just like a dream come true for an engineer, and getting to build things, work during the day with my hands, and then get to build this car and go on competitions and whatnot. So it was a great experience.
When did you sleep?
I was young. I was good.
You didn't need sleep. Yeah.
I didn't need sleep.
No, I can. During those same years for me, I was on the Formula SAE team, working some weeks 100+ hours, but I didn't have a full-time job, so I had it easy, I guess. What an awesome experience. So then you were I'm guessing in the shop, a very hands-on learner. Like, you didn't study CNC machining,
Correct.
So can you kind of share? I'd love to share just once you joined, what's been the trajectory, the growth of the company over the last 15 years or so?
Yeah, so when we first got into the government work, we immediately started with composites. So we were sending out all of our machining for tools and molds and whatnot. And my partner, he realized, one, that's extremely expensive and to send out all of these molds. So he bought a few CNCs, and from that point on, I was kind of self-taught, figured out how to program, took the typical software classes for the programming of them. But then when it came to setting up tool heights, I mean, YouTube wasn't even really big back then. So it was literally self-taught, trial and error, figuring out, okay, how does this make sense? And so now we still have those same CNCs. They don't run as much as they used to, but they're now more used for trimming and like secondary operations. But yeah, all self-taught CNC and self-taught on composites. I really, even though engineering school is about building and the mechanical mindset and whatnot, they don't really teach you the manufacturing side of things, right?
Yeah.
They more give you that mindset, which is great, and problem solving and approaching problems that way. But when it comes to learning about the composites and about different sheet metal assemblies and whatnot, that's where, as soon as, when I was young, I was just I was really just a sponge, right? Anyone that wanted to teach me information, I latched on. If they want to teach me how to form something, if I needed to learn how to CNC something, there was always someone I could reach out to. And then my goal was to understand it the first time they taught me. And if I didn't, just keep asking questions, right? So that I knew this is my one chance. And I'm going to learn how to form a window, injection mold, whatever it might be. If someone wants to teach me, I'm just going to be a sponge. Let them coach me.
Right.
That was just my goal.
Right.
So
it's a great way to approach life, I think, is to always be curious, always be learning.
Right.
I'm curious to maybe go back, and maybe this is prior to your time. It's unusual for a company to start straight into government contracts. And can you tell us what DLA stands for?
That's Defense Logistics Agency. So a lot of it's when they think of military work or aerospace work directly for the government. The DLA is the buying activity, and then they send it to each base. Okay. And when you're contracting, open bids and whatnot, and even the bigger OEMs, when they're doing defense work, they're still selling to the DLA. And we were going to the DLA, and then, so jumping into a story here, how we got our first big customer, which was Sikorsky, is we were making a part direct for the DLA, and no one was able to make it inside of Sikorsky. It was a composite, small compression mold part that we had great success with, multiple contracts, and Sikorsky actually came to us and said, hey, can you make that part for us? So that's how we got in with them. And then we just slowly started to tackle all of the larger OEMs and never really took on those, I guess, like service work. So no one just came to run just composite, like use our autoclave. Everything we were given just came with drawings, right? We rarely even see 3D models. All of our work is from older aircraft. We're doing to Mylars, which are one-to-one prints.
Oh, sure.
Reverse engineering, all the old specs, bringing it into new school specifications. So really bringing it up to speed. So that's kind of a lot of trial and error, even on that side of things with the engineering. So we still, to this day, we have, I believe, 6 engineers on staff, mechanical and aerospace engineering. And a lot of that too is for the manufacturing side of things, where we're not designing, we're just reverse engineering the blueprints to bring it into the new age, so it can run in the CNCs and the press brake and whatever it might be, the newer age equipment.
And then they're doing the process manufacturing engineering as well.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
So I'm sure people listening want to know, how do you get a foot in the door at the DLA? What's the process like?
There's actually a lot of really good resources out there with a lot of the local, it used to be called PTAC, I think it's called Apex now, where they'll help you get government contracts. And you can reach out to them. They have free lessons, free courses. You have to set up various different, your cage code and the sam.gov. There's a bunch of resources out there for all of this that they'll help you get set up.
Federal agency that's helping with that, or each by state, or?
I think it's federal, but each state has their own that you can reach out to.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And
it's not through the MEP network. It's not through the MEP network, is it? It's a separate thing.
Nope, it's separate.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. But similar, but just all focused on government contracting.
Got it. All right. Well, get your Google out, people, and start looking it up. Yeah, interesting. Okay. And then, so I often ask about how people get customers. And so you shared the story about Sikorsky. And then from then on, was it other primes reaching out because they saw you were the supplier through the DLA, or did you directly go approach and say, hey, we're qualified, we do all this work? What was your strategy for new business development?
A little bit of both. Sometimes we'd make even a part for Sikorsky, and then one of their suppliers would reach out to us. So really word of mouth. We just recently started reaching out to different companies. different customers that we would like to onboard, and again, focusing on some of the larger ones. So for that long-term relationship that we can build, or we have repeat orders, or really, because it takes so long to understand their system, we want to make it worthwhile. Where, let's say we get in with a Northrop or whoever, they have their set way of doing things. It's all similar, but you still have to figure out, okay, how do you read their specs? How do you interpret their drawings? And once you get your system set up for that, then it's easier to keep adding more and more customers that way.
And did you start early on with quality certifications like ISO or AS, or was that something you had to have to work at the DLA, or did you do that later? Or?
Yep. So that came when we got our first contract with Sikorsky. Before that, you just had to be ISO compliant with the government. They do have some higher level quality requirements, but you just can't bid those. And as soon as we got Sikorsky, that's when we tackled the AS9100 and really adopted that. And it's been part of our system ever since about 2012 when that has been in play.
Okay. Yeah, pretty long time.
Yeah.
Very good. Now you've talked a lot about building systems when we were at dinner and even prepping for this. I'd love to have you share your philosophies, your beliefs, and your just whatever you want to share about that.
Yeah. So in the beginning, so rewinding here a bit, when I was 25 is when I had the opportunity to have become an owner of the company. And so I went from running CNCs, and this will all play into the systems side of things. When I was running the CNCs, I instantly went from CNC to, okay, now let's have a vision for the company. So I had to figure out what those systems were. I had to Google. I had to figure out, okay, I know I can start with the AS9100, right? The AS9100. That's a good place to understand how other companies are doing it. But again, I didn't have the experience of working at another aerospace company, let alone one where I was about to run the show, right? Mm-hmm. So I took AS9100 with our team, and we said, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to figure out, okay, what does this piece mean, and drive it home. So that meant we took AS9100 and turned it into a full paper system. And in there, we were able to grow to a certain stage. And then I saw stagnation, right? We started to get to a certain point. Okay, what's changed? We're still getting the same amount of work. We have a really healthy backlog. What are we going to do to get work out faster? So now we went to the shop floor. We started to really become operations mindset. Jump on the shop floor. Okay, do we need a schedule? You started tackling all these separate pieces, knowing that it works right now. In the future, when you want to grow, it's not going to work. And fast forward, after many years of AS9100 certification, we started to develop our own, I call it an ERP software, but it's a very small version of that, where it was a work order and parts list manager, I guess. And again, I was young. I did not know what an ERP system was at that time. Didn't even know how to Google that. So I just there's got to be a way to put this all on some type of software and organize it and make it streamlined and whatnot. So I just started building that system.
So you were coding it yourself?
We were paying an outside company to code it, but I was designing the whole thing, yes.
You were designing the thing, okay.
Yeah.
And this is really just straight out of your creative mind. You didn't have any preconceived notions. You had no prior art or experience with any other,
Nothing.
It's funny, when we started doing that at our company, we also had really no idea. The term ERP was brand new to us too. So it's funny parallels. Okay, so you paid a firm to build an ERP for you.
Yep.
Please continue.
So we got to a point where, it was the start of I call it a BOM manager, where it took the customer's bill of materials and we distilled it down into what is usable for our shop. That was working great. We called it our shakeout. We'd shake out the job, send it to the shop floor. We had paper work orders, paper work instructions, and those two were married. So there was a certain point about 3 years ago now, where we said, okay, let's take it to stage 2, which is let's bring the work orders digital. Let's create batches. Let's have inventory all built into the software. We were going to get iPads and have them out on the shop floor. Well, the company that I was using, they had never built something like this either, so it was a lot of back and forth, and it was just taking a little longer than I wanted it to, which we could have probably waited, but right. To where we want to grow to and the investment we were making into the company, we needed to make a decision. So which led me to, and how we've met, is I started doing my research. And at that time, I knew what an ERP system was, right?
Sure.
And so I started doing my research. Okay.
Before you go into the next part, after you put in the paper system, did that improve the stagnation you were talking about previously? Like, did
Definitely.
you continue to grow or get more throughput, or the goals you had for that? Can you elaborate just a little bit on how it affected those things?
Yes, definitely. So the work instruction system that we had, that was all paper, and the work orders, it always started having a work instruction, but we literally had a set of work instructions with every single part, and then we tracked it through the work orders, which led us to increase. We almost doubled over 1 year. COVID was literally our best year, but we kept growing and growing and growing. Then it started to stagnate. So that's when I found, okay, let's go stage 2 on my internal homegrown ERP system. And then that was just taking a little too long. So, but yeah, no, definitely every stage, everything that we've put in place has helped to grow the company.
Okay. Do you feel like it's the standardization, it's the clarity for the shop employees? Like what specifically has been the most important aspect of that for you?
I'd say getting everyone on the same page. So where you have multiple different, because again, we do everything from engineering all the way down to manufacturing. Our lead times can be sometimes 150 to 250 days, because we're doing everything in between. We're making the tooling, we're making the molds, whatever we need for that project to get it out the door. So with that being said, you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? You've heard that term before. You got a lot of people trying to do the same work. So someone might be shaking out this job over here, and then this person doesn't have that notebook of the one that did it over here. So you try to get everyone on the same page. You do the work once, you flow it down to the next person. You got to make sure you didn't miss anything from the first person. You just keep kind of filtering it down to the point where people on the shop floor, they have what they need, nothing more, nothing less, and they can get the product through the shop floor as fast as possible.
I like that. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a good way to think about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, we were recently thinking about and talking about the concept of confidence out on the shop floor, right? When you are confident that you have what you need from upstream, you have all the information to set up your machine or inspect it or buy it off or do whatever. You can work a lot faster. You can work more confidently that you're doing the right thing, that you're not going to scrap the part or make a mistake. And just if you can work on systems to build more confidence, that's just going to lead to increased throughput and better quality.
Definitely. That they know that the drawings you gave them are the right revision, or the materials that they're grabbing is labeled correctly and it's signed off, and there's certifications, and they're not wasting their time or going to make bad parts. So they in the end, everyone wants to make good parts. So you got to make sure that they have all that information at their fingertips within reason, or they know who to go to if they are missing something.
Good. good. This is good stuff. Um, so let's talk about employees for a little bit. How have you hired? How have you recruited? How have you, you came kind of out of education. Do you work workforce development? Do you work with local community colleges? Yeah, how do you find your folks and how do you train them and get them up to speed and proficient?
It's been very organic. Most of our employees have known someone either in the company or word of mouth. And like, for instance, we've really only posted on Indeed a handful of times or any job posting board. But um, internally, once we do find good candidates, we're really cross training everyone because we do so many things. Someone could be laying up a part one day, but also then go on the shop floor the following month or week or day to assemble a part. So everyone really has a well-rounded training in that aspect. But when it comes to working with the local development, we haven't done that yet. I have researched it, but haven't needed it so far.
That's nice. That's a good. How do you make sure you're finding good people that are a good fit? Do you have a thorough interview process, or yeah, how do you make sure this person is going to land well with you?
Depends on what we're hiring for. So one question I always ask, like if we're hiring an engineer, for example, I'll ask them what their hobbies are, because what I really want to hear them say is that they like building things or they're very interested in how things work. Because at our company, we're manufacturing. That's what the engineers are getting into. Or if it's someone in the composites room, are they good with their hands? Oddly enough, are they good with arts and crafts, right? Because they're using their hands, they're using fabric material. If they're out on the shop floor, if they're a CNC machinist, it's just really understanding what their goals are, what their hobbies are, and see how they would fit with us and our culture. And because we are a small shop, so everyone's very close, and we all have to rely on each other very much. So
Right.
yeah, it's a little different for each role that we're hiring for.
Yeah. So the things you mentioned, I feel like speak more to aptitude and skill set, maybe. What about the culture side? How do you make sure you're not going to get a bad apple?
Um, well, you can ask them kind of about their previous jobs. You can start to listen to the things that they're saying about their previous managers, employees. If they're coming in complaining, right? Oh, I couldn't do this
Sure.
because of this, because of this, because of this. They have a can't do attitude, where we want them to learn and have a can do attitude and a growth mindset. Because, like I said too, we cross train everyone. Some people want to come in, do a single job, and that's okay, right? But we need to know that up front so we can put them in the right department or division of the company. But it's really just kind of listening to the words that they're going to say, asking them the right questions, getting to know them right up front, understand if they have a family, what their goals are, their previous experience, where they'd like to be in 5 years. Just really getting that on the table right up front.
Nice. Yeah, that seems pretty solid. And the fact that many of them come as a reference from someone they know probably is also a huge bonus, right?
Right, definitely.
Somewhat of a
Yes,
known quantity. Yeah.
yes.
You got to do
We're
someone on the
very,
inside you already know and trust that can vouch for this person. Yeah.
yes, yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Everyone's pretty close. There's a lot of, like, my sister is our purchasing manager, and then there's a couple other um,
Okay.
relatives in the company and whatnot. So it's a very close knit, family oriented company in that aspect.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, you guys have grown a lot over a number of years. I'd love for you to talk about how that growth has worked. Stories, challenges you faced and overcame. Metrics that you track to make sure you're always improving and growing. Yeah, I'd love to have you share anything you'd like around that realm.
Yeah. So one big thing is listening to the customer. We can only see what the customer wants us to see when it's in terms of RFQs or making them happy. And one example of that is we are NADCAP composites certified. And that
Okay.
was
Nice.
really that was a big challenge that we took on for such a small team. Also, while trying to keep everything else going, so we took that on about 2-ish years ago, and that was from our customer who wanted us to get into the next level of composites. And with that, we needed to get NADCAP certified. So really recognizing what the customer wants, because the customer is going to help you grow. Some customers are out there that you haven't found yet, and those are going to help you get to another stage. But just really making the customer happy, understanding what they want, and then not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? There's systems like AS9100, lean manufacturing. There's NADCAP, right? Those systems are put in place because that's what works, and that's what the big OEMs want to see.
Got it. You mentioned lean. Have you done a lot with lean?
Not formally,
Okay.
but more just from an engineering mindset. I've taken a few courses through engineering school, but just keeping everyone on the same page. Okay, why are we walking from this machine, the water jet, to the press brake so many times? Just like simple things like that. Let's move the cart in front of you so you don't have to turn around to put the piece of material behind you, or just small stuff like that, but nothing formal.
Got it. Has that been pretty transformational to your shop? Just doing those small continuous improvement types of activities?
Definitely. One, surprisingly, that always turns heads when people come into our shop is we have all the floors painted with aisleways and designated work cells and whatnot. Naturally, we did that. We didn't do any formal, like I said, lean process,
Sure.
but it helps to organize everyone so they get in a certain routine and understand that once you get to a certain size, where before, right, we could have maybe put that part on that table over there and everyone knew that one had to go to special process next, or it had to be shipped out. You get to a certain size, ship a certain amount of product that just naturally over time, you have to put in a shipping and receiving area. You got to put into tooling receiving area. You have to have designated carts for certain machines or labeled racks with only this type of material can go here. So it really kind of just grows organically. I wouldn't say at any point in time we're like, if we do lean or if we do this certain process, then X will happen. It's,
Sure.
hey, we're about to run a production, our first production size quantity. What do we need to do to make that work, right? What are the hurdles we're going to run into? Are we going to have to paint every day? What's our goal? That's just one instance where it was like we were constantly painting these parts the same quantity and setting that up so it's a engineer at once, comes out the same process every single time the same way. So.
Did you have pushback from the team when you wanted to start implementing some of the concepts, even if it wasn't a formal lean implementation?
I think because it wasn't formal, we didn't get pushback. It was just kind of the new, hey, this is the process. Most of our team has been with us for quite some time, even through the growth stages. So they're used to it at this point. But yeah, no, it was because it wasn't so formal, in my opinion. That's why there wasn't that much pushback. It was, in the end, it's always to make their job easier on the shop floor.
So I mentioned KPIs. What do you track to make sure your company's performing well?
In each area, in each process, whether it's planning, manufacturing, or quality, we have certain, the on-time delivery, obviously, we're tracking that. Our customers
internally
tracking it,
as
so we're
well
tracking
as
it.
internally for each department feeding the others, or just to your end customer?
Certain departments, so certain bottleneck departments that we need to, for instance, like CAD modeling. Sometimes that can take longer than it should or longer than we planned for. So we need to keep that on a pretty tight budget. But on-time delivery in a general and whole for all of our customers.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's one. What anything else? I imagine the standard AS9100 ones, quality,
right,
things like that. But
definitely.
Anything else that's unique, that's maybe a bit different?
Scrap, we're tracking scrap. which is an AS9100 requirement. We go through all of those, share them with each other, so everyone knows kind of how we're doing. And then we also have morning meetings every morning for the shop floor to kind of give the daily what needs to happen on the production side of things. And at that point too, we will share some KPIs with the team. And then we also have employee meetings where it's all hand employee meetings where we'll share KPIs at those as well.
So your monthly management meetings is just the management team, not the whole employee space. That's. And how many folks are on your team today?
About 25.
Oh, okay, nice. That's a good size. I'd love for you to share some of the kind of most memorable, stories, projects, customers, situations that just turned out great, or you just really resonate in your memory.
So when we first started, let's go back. When I first started as on the management side of things and working my way towards being an owner, we were already doing business with Sikorsky. And at that point, our score was pretty low, in the low teens. And we were really trying
out of 100?
Out of 100.
So, low teens. Okay.
Yes. That was a large challenge that we undertook to the point where, and a lot of that comes to is we were getting a lot of the projects came to us already late from our customers. Because a lot of our stuff.
So this is a score based on quality deliveries, like some combined score of total kind of vendor performance. Now, why would they keep doing work with you if you were in the low teens?
Because we could solve a lot of problems.
You still solve problems.
We're a one-stop shop. We could do composites. We could do the large assemblies, where a lot of in like the machining world, right? It's pretty easy to go buy that one fabricated part that's out of aluminum, where ours is a whole entire door assembly or an escape window for the CH-53 or the gunner window for the Black Hawk. So it's got multiple components that they're not used to buying, right? They're not used to buying individual details on that assembly. They buy the whole entire assembly every time because it needs to be assembled that way.
Makes sense.
So we were providing that service of like one-stop shop. We can do composites, the sheet metal. We even form windows, so stretched acrylic windows, vacuum forming, whatever it might be. We kind of took on everything, got the equipment for it, and solved that problem for them. So going back kind of to in the low teens, we're now at a 96, 97 score with them. Wow. So and that took quite a bit to get there, but it was really, like I said in the beginning, understanding their system. And, okay, what are we doing wrong that our score is so low? Well, one, you have to maintain your score. Some people don't know this, but there's actually criteria you have to go back in. There might be some late codes you have to explain because we were doing tooling, right? We were manufacturing tooling. We had to factor that into the part build. So there was a lot of just understanding that and what goes into that score, slowly bringing that up and also delivering on time and getting those jobs and working with the buyers to say, hey, this one came in late. What are we going to do? When do you guys want that part? So then we would go back and we would almost get a new delivery date. But if you didn't say anything, it would still affect your score accordingly.
Right, because you quoted X lead time.
Exactly.
And they probably order it late, so they ask you for a lead time shorter than what you quoted. So unless you try to remedy that at the beginning, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Yep, exactly. And then just being open with them. I know that's a common thing, but it's harder to do in practice than it is to say, because you literally have to be open. You don't want to hide anything from your customer, good or bad, right? Because that just goes, it never works out. So you just want to be, hey, we're having issues in this stamping press, or this part we thought would come out here and it's now going to be about 2 weeks behind. You want to just keep them always in the know because they have to report to someone else, and it's usually their customer, right? Or it's the aircraft or the production line, whatever it might be. When everyone's informed, everyone's happy. Yeah. So that's always been our experience.
Yeah, that theme of prompt communication, accurate communication. Don't try to hide things and think you're going to recover and never let them know. That's never the right answer. So,
No,
yeah, I've heard that from other guests. So that's a good thing to reinforce for everybody, that being really proactive and candid is the best way to go.
definitely. And I guess too, another thing we always say is under promise, over deliver. So you never want to go beyond and get the hoping and wishing and praying that you're going to get it out by this time. No, it's under promise, over deliver. Deliver early on the date that you said, or deliver right on time. You got to be known for when you say something, you're going to make it happen.
Got it. So I imagine going from teens to high 90s, that took a few years, I imagine.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
about 2-ish, little over 2 years. Yep.
Oh, okay. Not as much as I was thinking. Was there a lot of putting processes into place rather than just, I mean, was that a key part of it? Building your process about, say, contract review and lead times, that's comes down to a process, right? If it's you quoted 10 weeks and they place it for 6, the process is to go back and so yeah, I'd love to have you elaborate on that.
Yeah, going back down to the other system where we had to catch everything as we were going through contract review, planning, the release stage into manufacturing, really fine tuning. Okay, we got to manufacturing and we forgot to provide this to the technicians. Okay, how can we capture that back in contract review or capture that back in engineering? What does that look like in building those stop gates around that, whether that's a checklist. I mean, it could be, these are very simple tools that you can build out that help to get to that successful stage through manufacturing. But really building all that into it.
Yeah, yeah. Great story. You have other ones similar?
We kind of every year we just kind of take on a new challenge, whether it's NADCAP, a new customer, a new process. We just acquired a couple more buildings, so we're up to 5 buildings at this point. So over the next few years, we're going to implement those. Mm-hmm. So we challenge ourselves a lot as a team, and something unique is almost everyone on that team is about my age. We've all had the experience at LOC and growing together and developing those systems as a team. So yeah, that's just really every year there's just a new challenge that we take on. And for instance, at the end of last year, 2 years now, 2022, we decided to implement ProShop. So took on the new ERP system, abandoned our old homegrown system, and that was last year's challenge. Where this coming year, it's just growing with different customers and enhancing the ones that we have and growing with them and building a stronger relationship with those two. So yeah, it's just every year there's a new challenge that it might be. Sometimes we'll say, hey, should we get NADCAP heat treat? And we're like, okay, no, wait, we gotta wait a minute. Let's try to fine tune what we have.
Yeah, it sounds like you do a lot of different things. So yes. You've mentioned obviously machining, composites. Well, composites is a broad category. I'm sure there's lots of different types in there. I've heard you say press brake, water jet. What are all, painting? What are all the different processes you guys actually do there?
So I like to say we do composites, metal forming, and plastic forming. And then we take all of those and we can assemble them. More specifically, we're doing composite structures. So whether that's an autoclave, prepreg, panel fairing, or a metal bond door assembly, or compression molding. But composites can also be a secondary bond. So you're assembling 2 different materials with some type of 2-part adhesive, which all gets wrapped up into a NADCAP composite, because you have to meet all of those strict customer requirements. And that's what NADCAP is there put in place to do. It's more of a process audit than anything. So that's on the composite side. And then we also do sheet metal. So we're going to do brake forming. We have water jet. So we're going to do water jetting, stamping. Let's see. Just various hand forming, CNC machining, just anything on the metal side. Mostly aluminum, but we've done some steels, some titaniums, stainless steel. And then when it comes to plastic forming, we're doing vacuum forming, which is a sheet plastic and a mold. So that's a lot of like the interior panels for aircraft and small details. We still have plastic injection molding as well. So that was my partner's previous couple companies with injection molding. So we keep one machine around, and here and there we're using it, not too often, but there's sometimes that random part on an assembly that has to be injection molded. We also do window forming. So a lot of the passenger and side windows on a helicopter are what's called stretched acrylic. And what you can do is you can heat that up in an oven or press, and we can blow form it. So if you imagine a medevac helicopter, they have that bubble window on the side that they're sticking their head down and looking in. We can actually make that full blown bubble window.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
That's
take all of
learn.
a lot. And it just all happens. We see a part that we can make and want to tackle and implement that process, and then it just keeps growing. So.
And that's like through the DLA, there's an RFQ that comes up and you open it, look at the drawings, and be like, oh, this is, we could do all this, but this part of it is brand new. Let's figure it out.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, right?
So you clearly have the confidence that you can pull it off in the lead time, procure the equipment, knowledge, process, know-how, and get it done. And now you're doing that at high 90%, in terms of delivering to what they asked for.
Yep. And so all of that learning stage probably happened in the first, let's say, 5 to 8 years of developing all of those processes. Now we're to the point where we're just taking each one to the next level. So is it fine tuning the press brake and making sure that that is running smoothly, where before it might have been, okay, we did a little bit of press braking here, and now we're strictly adding all of these, just enhancing, these capabilities instead of adding new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other processes you think you might get into? Additive or, who knows what?
I guess it depends what we see, right? So far, everything we've seen, we've implemented, except for machining, honestly. That's the only one, because there is so much competition out there for it. We don't do the part machining because we're not seeing a lot of that, but we're doing more of the
like
secondary.
You said, it's more of the secondary processes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And the one-off, sometimes there's some parts that are buried into an assembly that is like a hinge assembly on the a slot door for a C5 aircraft or whatnot. There's something that we need to machine.
Got it. So because you do all this direct government work and things that are going into defense vehicles, where are you at and what are you seeing from your clients or the DLA about CMMC and cybersecurity?
It's a requirement. So they're in, I guess it's more of in the survey phase where you have to do your SPRS scores. A lot of like Lockheed is doing a lot of surveys to make sure that you're compliant and that you're working towards it. Right when CMC came out, NIST, right when that came out, we jumped on it right away. We
was that
implemented
back
all the
in
hard.
like 2015, 16?
Yep, right around.
Oh, really?
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we were like, this is going to be a thing. We need to jump on it. I know that it was kind of gray at that time. They didn't really know which way they were going, but the OEMs also didn't know, so they had to flow that down to us. and we jumped right onto it. I mean, down to adding key cards to doors and locking everything up because we didn't know which way it was going to go. But yeah, building that into the software I was building, right? Understanding how that affected that. But yeah, definitely we've had it since it was first published.
Wow. I mean, the story that's told and the way I understand it is that when the NIST 800-171 became law, it was still so poorly adopted, and companies self-certifying but not actually being secure, and then therefore lots of stuff gets stolen and hacked. And but it sounds like you took it much more seriously. Is that because you were directly connected to the primes and they were just up in your business and you had to actually demonstrate compliance?
It's part of it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then also understanding, I watched a lot of webinars, went to a lot of courses and whatnot to understand, okay, how is this going to affect us? Because being familiar with things like AS9100, where is it similar where they're going to roll it out and you have to get audited? It could be we had to mitigate that risk of, could this play a huge factor into the growth of the business? Mm-hmm. So really just saying, okay, there's enough going around about this that we need to do something. And then obviously the OEMs flowing that down to us added a little propellant, but yeah, it was so talked about and so misunderstood at the time by most people that our industry of, let's say, the smaller defense contractors that we knew, that I was like, this is going to be a huge problem for them. They don't have internal IT. They don't have these companies that they're just the smaller. They've been around for a long time. They're doing some of the simpler work, and now that requirement comes out. I'm like, oh, they're going to be hurting. And of course, a lot of them, as we've heard, unfortunately have. But yeah, no, we've been monitoring it very closely.
What maybe elaborate, what have you heard about some of those small contractors?
It's just, it's very hard to understand if you don't know what you're looking at, right? If you're not familiar with that language of cybersecurity, if you don't understand how your network works internally, there's just a lot of learning that it's not as simple as, like, that was harder to learn than the CNCs, I would have to argue, because sure. you're learning a whole new language, right? You're trying to understand, okay, how does this affect the business? The government's going to flow this down to us, and this is going to affect what kind of contracts we get, right? So we need to do it. So there was that expedite that we needed to have to be able to do it. But just kind of, I think the biggest struggle is that they just don't know where to turn to. They don't have that internal, maybe their legacy contractors where they've been doing it for so long. They don't even have AS9100, so they're just not used to implementing these new systems. But yeah, just the unknown, really.
Have you seen shops decide to shut their doors because they just don't want to deal with it, or are they just paying a lot of money to some third-party service to try to help them get compliant, or what's been the outcome for some of them?
I haven't seen any of them directly close their doors. Okay. I know some that have spent, like you said, the third-party high fees, but I don't know. Obviously, this year will tell all with a lot of the CMMC being finally rolled out. So I think we'll see a lot of that, which direction that takes towards the end of this year.
But you're probably feeling like you're sitting fairly pretty because you took the NIST standard seriously years ago and have had time. And did you do it mostly internally? Just figured it all out yourself? Or did you?
A little bit. So the people that were the company that was designing our software, they also do a little bit of our IT. So I was consulting with them. They weren't necessarily doing the work, but they were helping us, let's say, put in the firewall and really lock up our server and the Active Directories and whatnot. But mostly internally managing it and maintaining it. But kind of looking to those outside sources, bringing it all the way back to the beginning, being a sponge, and just who can I go talk to and understand what they know, and reaching out.
And so, do you feel like your SPRS score is pretty good? When you can get a C3 PAO auditor, you're kind of ready for it at this point. When it finally gets pushed down that you have to do that.
I would say by the end of this year we will be ready for that audit, because we implemented ProShop. There's a lot of those changes and switching over to the AWS GovCloud and whatnot, and then refining our system for that. But we fully plan to jump into everything that ProShop offers for the cybersecurity and the ProShop Safe side of things.
Yeah, it's a fun new product. Excellent. Yeah, I know it's with the rule that just got released, or the proposed rule just a few weeks ago. There's just been LinkedIn, particularly, has been a buzz of people talking about this. So
definitely.
Have you had your clients come audit you or send people in to talk to you about it, or is it just all through the contracts that they flow down to you, up to you to do?
Yeah. Yep. Just through contracts, self-assessments still, just as the government's doing with everyone with their SPRS scores. That's similar to what the OEMs and primes are doing.
So they have their own surveys. They're not just having you report your SPRS scores to them. They have their own. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. They're having us do both, where there's, I think I filled out two. I did two earlier, one at the end of last year and then one a little bit earlier this week. So you got to keep them up. They expire every year. So like where the SPRS score expires every 3 years, the primes are making those expire every year.
Got it. Okay. All right. So one of the questions I often sort of wrap up with is, asking you to share some of your best strategic moves, biggest wins, best decisions you've made over the years. What would you say to that?
I would say that getting AS9100 and NADCAP, even though they may seem like a burden up front, adopting those and making those really a part of your company is probably the biggest thing that we've done that has helped us get to that next level. One, it shows your customers that you're serious, right? It shows them that you're willing to take on that level, have that level of scrutiny inside of your company. But it also gives the company structure. So it gives you that guideline, that guidebook to work towards. You can interpret it how you want, right? And that's the game of business, right? Interpret it as efficiently as possible. But once you really grab those and take those and run with them and make them part of your company, I would say that's probably the biggest thing that we've done, outside of different equipment and developing management teams and whatnot. But those are probably the biggest things.
So it's not necessarily just the opening of doors, but is it really come down to the standardization of processes, which then makes things more efficient and more standardized and less stress and just flow more smoothly?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It gives you the guidelines. It gives you the guardrails that you can work with. You don't have to try to figure out what that next wheel that you need to invent is. It's all invented for you. You just need to implement, interpret it the best as possible.
Yeah. No, that's wise. I definitely think, AS9100 is and I'm not quite as familiar with NADCAP, but it's sort of a QMS, but it's really a quality management system. But in truth, it's really a business management system. It's just like an effective way to run a business that has closed loops for continuous improvement and just making sure you're keeping your customers happy. And I think the companies that are the most successful are often, clearly all, when they think back of the themes of my, prior guests, the ones that, have grown the most, been the most successful, definitely lean into standardizing those processes, which is what those are all about. So
Definitely.
yeah, great advice. Um, so what would so maybe this is a somewhat redundant question. Your advice for newer shops starting out, what would you suggest they do to ensure their success and growth into the future?
We hear it a lot, but I think the phrase "keep it simple" is super important. Don't try to, as I told you this entire the podcast of how many things we've taken on, but
Right.
really every time we've kept it simple. We don't try to overcomplicate things. We just understand. So if you're starting out, keep it simple by maybe it's not take on AS9100 right away, but it's work towards that. Grab that, buy that standard, read through it, train yourself, have a goal, keep it simple, right? It's not taking on. In order to open the doors, we need to get AS9100. No, it's work a few years. You can still work towards that certification. When you're ready, you're ready. It's really just keep it simple.
Nice. All right. Um, if people want to reach out to you and learn more about LOC, how would you suggest they do that?
You can visit our website. It's LOCMFG, like manufacturing.com. That's so you can see all of our processes, the types of parts that we've made. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Derek Kowalski. Be happy to connect and really provide some insight if anyone wants to learn more about what we're doing.
Yeah, when we were prepping for this, you mentioned that, something that you would love to get out of it is to sort of help foster or build a bit of a community of people that are like-minded. I wonder if you just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. When I was trying to figure this whole thing out of what the direction of the company needed to be, I would go to conferences, and I was probably one of the youngest guys in the room, which is when you're the youngest guy in the room, it's hard to get a say in things and get to talk to the right people. So I always kind of wish there was some way to connect and build that community of maybe it's the younger guys or the new business owners directly in manufacturing. They're just trying to figure out what's an ERP system, or what is AS9100? When's the right time to do AS9100? How do you get in with that customer? What's it like working with that customer, right? Just building that community of people that can talk to each other and lean on each other
Mm-hmm.
to really understand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, sometimes that's unfortunately harder to do than you would hope.
right.
Some people are a bit more guarded about what they do. They don't want to share too much. I've been super fortunate. People like yourself and many others have chosen to, come on the show and open up pretty well on what they've done to ensure their success and share their journeys. So yeah, I hope people reach out to you. So reach out to Derek if you're listening. I know he genuinely does want to connect and you know meet with folks that have shared goals, shared understanding of how to get better at business. So awesome,
Definitely.
Derek. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a true pleasure, and I know folks definitely will have some takeaways that they can implement and use in their shops and ideas that can help improve their businesses. So appreciate all
Very
your
good.
time today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me on.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care.
Paul.